Welcome to my new series on how to spot a narcissist. I thought I'd mix things up a bit here. For the videos I've posted in the past, I've always carried out a full analysis on each individual before I started writing the series. So the point of view is essentially, this person is a narcissist and let me show you why. In this series, I thought it would be interesting for me to come in blind and analyse the clips as I see them for the first time. That way, hopefully, I can show the process for determining if somebody is a narcissist or not. This analysis will be on the footage from a show called Couples Therapy, where different couples participate in a 20-week therapy program of 1-hour sessions. One of the things that attracted me to this show is that both the director, whose parents were therapists, and the show's therapist have said that they wanted to give an authentic look into how couples therapy works, rather than focusing on dramatization. I'll put a link to the show's Wikipedia page below. The first couple to appear on episode 1 of season 1 is Annie and Mao, a couple that's been married for 23 years. As always, I'm using H.G. Tudor's terminology and system for analysing narcissists.
So he has a lot of birthday stuff. Always has.
Already a couple of things jump out to me. Mao is spreading himself out in an exaggerated way, leaning back with his arms and legs spread wide. It's a very confident posture. However, we should absolutely not read too much into this because there are multiple explanations for this. For example, it could actually be that he's feeling nervous and this is a behaviour he uses to deal with that. Or he could just be a very confident person. As soon as Annie starts to mention that Mao has birthday stuff, he smirks and looks at the therapist, shaking his head. In isolation, this looks like a red flag, because it seems as if he's being dismissive and not giving his partner a chance to put her feelings and experiences forwards. Now this could be the behaviour of a narcissist, nullifying a threat to their sense of control with dismissiveness, but there are many other explanations for why he might be doing this behaviour. We should certainly not try to form any conclusions at this point. When we're seeing a new couple like this, it's as if we've been thrown in the deep end of a swimming pool, and it's going to take some time for us to work out which way is up and which way is down. As I always say, each piece of information we receive is only a tiny piece of the overall puzzle. We need to collect many, many pieces over time to start to see the true picture. Here, for example, it could be the case that Annie has been bringing up this birthday thing every day for a year, and Mao is completely sick to the teeth of it, and he has a wearily amused reaction of, "Oh, not this again." And also bear in mind that couples in therapy will often have bad communication habits that they've built up over many years, and that doesn't necessarily mean that either of them is a narcissist.
I have been unsuccessful for 20 years. And so 2 years ago, I was pulling out all the stops. Like I had planned this huge weekend. I was trying so hard.
Annie says that she has been unsuccessful for 20 years, presumably meaning unsuccessful at making Mao happy on his birthday for 20 years. This is a red flag. Narcissists love to spoil occasions, such as birthdays. They ruin other people's birthdays because they can't stand the attention being on anyone else. It wounds them. And they often create a scene on their own birthday. There are several drivers behind this, but often it's mainly because it's a way of devaluing their partner by throwing everything they've done back in their face. And the negative emotional reaction their partner has to this subconsciously gives the narcissist fuel and makes them feel as if they have control over their partner. The narcissist's sense of entitlement and the fact that after the golden period at the start of the relationship, their partner is for the most part viewed through a negative lens, means that nothing they could do would ever live up to the narcissist's expectations for their big day. Now bear in mind that we haven't heard Mao's side of this yet. For example, it could actually be the case that Annie is the one who always ruins his birthday, and she's just blame shifting towards him. But on the face of it, this would be a red flag for Mao, that he spoils occasions. Annie also claims that she was putting in a lot of effort to plan a birthday for Mao. This could be a display of emotional empathy. But as with most actions, this is still something that a narcissist might do. For example, they might plan a birthday celebration to show what a great partner they are to other people, and do the rounds at the party, making it clear that they were the one to plan it all, and soaking up the adulation. While Annie's talking, Mao is gazing around the room, seemingly uninterested in what she's saying, and looking almost everywhere but at her. Is this a form of withdrawal in order to nullify the threat to his control of being criticized? Or is he generally just a fidgety person who can't sit still? Again, these are all small pieces of a puzzle that will help us to see the overall picture. But we can't answer all these questions right now because we've been thrown completely in the deep end.
But in my focus on the weekend, I had been not attentive during that week leading up to it. And he kept saying to me, basically, you're barking up the wrong tree. And I wasn't listening and I wasn't getting it. And I was like, oh, just shh. Like, I gotta just wait till the weekend. Just wait till the weekend. And he said, cancel everything. I'm not going with you. I don't want anything. I don't want this. And by the way, where's my passport? And he went to Italy.
So this is an extreme reaction from Mao. At face value, it sounds very much like the behavior of a narcissist whose partner is in devaluation. His actions of telling Annie to cancel all the plans she had made at the last minute and jetting off to Italy without her would certainly fit in as highly provocative and devaluing actions, and they show a lack of emotional empathy. But we have to keep an open mind and think whether there could be alternative explanations for his behavior. Firstly, there's always the chance that Annie's twisting the facts of this story, and we haven't heard from Mao on this yet, so we have to take her story with a pinch of salt. However, assuming it's true, we can't get round the fact that Mao's behavior shows a lack of emotional empathy towards his partner. Most of the time, a non-narcissist wouldn't act like this. Even if they were frustrated, or they felt that they weren't being listened to about their birthday plans, they would still recognize that their partner was trying to do something nice for them, and would feel a sense of obligation to attend the celebration. But there are certainly situations which could erode a non-narcissist's emotional empathy to the point that they could have such an extreme reaction. As just one example, if year after year Annie ignored Mao's requests and pleas not to have a party, and she always ploughed on creating one that he didn't want, and in the process always made it all about her and what a wonderful partner she was, I can imagine a situation where a non-narcissist might eventually have just had enough of the whole charade and snap one year. On Annie's part, it does seem as if she's blaming herself to a fair degree for the outcome, saying that she hadn't been attentive that week, that she wasn't listening and getting it, and that she was telling Mao to shush and wait for the weekend. On the face of it, this sounds as if it could be the behavior of a victim who has become accustomed to trying to figure out what they've done wrong whenever the narcissist gets upset with them, which is a very typical dynamic between narcissist and victim. So her reaction implies a sense of accountability. However, as I'll keep saying, we shouldn't jump to any conclusions. Some higher functioning narcissists will show fake accountability, because they know that being seen to take accountability for their actions will make them look good. Over time, it's possible to identify fake accountability, because unlike with true accountability, actions don't match words, and the behavior or similar behaviors are repeated. But at the moment, we have no way of knowing for sure whether this is true accountability or fake accountability. Finally, at this point, Mao has moved on from gazing around the room to picking up something and playing with it. Again, this might be showing some level of disrespect towards his wife by looking as if he's not paying attention. Or it could just be that he's a fidgety person, or that he's nervous. The next clip we see seems to start at a later point in the session.
I don't have complicated needs. I am utterly transparent and completely communicative about what it is I want. I'm also totally consistent. I am the easiest person to deal with.
Says you.
Says me.
Now we get to hear from Mao for the first time. And already we have a red flag for grandiosity. The language he uses to describe himself is peppered with over-the-top adjectives. He's utterly transparent and completely communicative, totally consistent, and the easiest person to deal with. Does this mean Mao's a narcissist? Of course not. He may actually be all those things for all we know, and he's just being honest. But this is another piece of the puzzle for us, because we can compare his self-description to his real actions and behaviours that reveal themselves over time. His attitude actually may be a signal that he's not coming into couples therapy with a constructive mindset, that both of them need to make changes and meet in the middle in order to make things work. Rather, his mindset seems to be that he isn't the one with any issues, due to being transparent, communicative, consistent, and easy to deal with. Could this be an early signal of a lack of accountability? Obviously, Annie doesn't think what Mao says rings true, commenting, "says you," which prompts Mao's response of, "says me." Who's right? We can't say yet.
Well, say it. What are your wishes?
All I want is, see, I'm trying to think of how to say it so it doesn't sound terrible.
Why say it terrible?
So what I want is to have zero responsibility, to have all the sex I want without any work on my part of any kind. Like zero work, zero thinking about it, and it has to be both spectacular and enthusiastic and genuine. So that.
But you want the birthday experience to be like that?
Like with the birthday, for example.
Yeah. So what happened
She was putting in
for you? What happened?
all this effort, but the things she was doing is the things that she could only imagine I would want if she never was paying attention.
For example,
it was going to be a costume calendar, and then it was a dominatrix, and then it was like she had I was probably like a threesome. It was like stuff.
Sexual events?
Yes.
So we get an important piece of context. The birthday celebration that Annie was planning for Mao was sex-related, and Mao has been talking about his sexual needs, which are all the sex he wants, which has to be spectacular, enthusiastic, and genuine, with zero responsibility, work, and thinking about it on his part. This could show a sense of entitlement. It sounds as if Mao has sky-high expectations for something which is far above and beyond what would be typical in a relationship, and wants his partner to do all the work to procure it for him. And it does show another red flag for Mao: hypersexual behavior, something that many but not all narcissists display. Does this mean he's a narcissist? No, but it's another factor which makes it slightly more likely that he is. It would be interesting to know whether Mao's sexual appetite for other women is something Annie willingly engaged with, or whether she was persuaded by Mao over time, and whether it goes both ways. Is she allowed to be with other men too? We'll have to keep watching.
But you knew about it. It wasn't a surprise.
No.
It wasn't a complete surprise. Part of it, she was so enthusiastic about it, she couldn't keep it to herself.
Okay.
I was
You heard these potential exciting events as...
I didn't hear them as anything. I just simply observed that you're doing what you want to do for me instead of what I want you to do for me. And
So to get even more into the weeds, for example, the sexual fantasies played out would be Andy's sexual fantasies and not yours?
well, not exactly.
Is that what we're saying?
No, they were sort of like her description of what mine were if you never listened to me. I mean, they're objective.
There was some fantasy of what you want, but it's not really hitting the mark.
To begin with, they all sound like fun.
Okay.
There's no problem there. They were all. There was all.
If it had just been a random Saturday and not your birthday, also
see.
it may have been a little more welcome. It
I
was this
see.
pressure of
But
his
because it was
birthday.
a birthday, it felt particularly misattuned. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean,
every year. It's the trap.
if this is it, if this is like the big hurrah, this is what I've been 25 years of being Mr. Amazing was like waiting. This was it. Then like no thanks. I'm just not interested.
So it turns out that Annie actually was planning things that Mao likes. As he says, they all sound like fun, there's no problem there. And she was putting in considerable effort, planning a dominatrix, a costume counter, a threesome, and presumably also some things that we don't know about. And she was, as Mao says, enthusiastic about it, so much so that she couldn't help but tell him some of the plans. With this fuller picture, it certainly seems that Mao's expectations are extremely high, not deeming this to be enough because it was his birthday. This implies a sense of entitlement from him. And his behaviour of telling Annie to cancel the plans and flying to Italy by himself instead at the last minute shows a further sense of entitlement, plus a lack of empathy, a lack of accountability, and devaluing behaviour towards Annie. It's certainly not how a non-narcissist would typically act, especially given that Annie was trying so hard and actually setting up activities that he liked. This is an important piece of the puzzle. Annie mentions the pressure of it being Mao's birthday, and then says, "Every year, it's a trap." With the context we now have, this is all starting to sound like the dynamic of a narcissist, using their birthday to devalue their partner. Finally, we see some more grandiosity from Mao, who says he's not interested if this is what he gets after 25 years of being Mr. Amazing. It almost goes without saying that this is a big red flag. In fact, this is such an obviously narcissistic thing to say that it could even be starting to point us in the direction of Mao being a lesser narcissist. That is, an extremely obvious narcissist that doesn't have any facade of being a good and kind person. But of course, it's still far too early to say anything definitive about him.
You became angry?
I don't think angry. I think I'm disappointed. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know what I could do differently.
You don't know what you're doing wrong?
Yes. So imagine that I want her to do something differently, right? I could get her to do whatever I want. That's not what I want. What I want is for her to do whatever I want without me having to make it happen. To just, I want to get a glass of water before I ask, and it's there waiting.
Again, this is ringing major alarm bells, because it's the mentality of a narcissist. Narcissism is all about control. Subconsciously, a narcissist always needs to have control over their partner, and the ultimate stage of this control would be for the partner essentially to exist only to do the narcissist's bidding, and to do it without the narcissist even having to tell them what to do. The partner has completely internalized the narcissist's wishes and desires and runs around trying to fulfill them. This is what Mao is describing. He says, "What I want is for her to do whatever I want without me having to make it happen. To just, I want a glass of water before I ask, and it's there waiting." This ultimate stage is actually impossible in reality for a couple of reasons. Firstly, a narcissist has an unlimited sense of entitlement. They can never be satisfied. Their partner can never provide enough no matter what they do. Secondly, after the partner enters sustained devaluation, everything about them is viewed through a negative lens by the narcissist. So even if the partner provided everything the narcissist had previously said they wanted, they would still find some way to be unsatisfied and displeased with what was provided. I've talked many times on this channel about the contradictory and ever-changing viewpoint of a narcissist, and this is another example. Something they previously liked can suddenly be disliked in order to devalue their partner. This dynamic is exactly what we're seeing here. Annie's trying to please Mao, going to a great effort and actually doing things which Mao likes. But it still isn't right. He still finds a way to complain. The way that Mao talks about Annie shows his sense of entitlement and also his objectification of her, as if she's a machine that he owns to do his bidding for him, where he says, "So imagine that I want her to do something differently, right? I could get her to do whatever I want. That's not what I want. What I want is for her to do whatever I want without me having to make it happen." And earlier, when he said, "And you're doing what you want to do for me instead of what I want you to do for me." This again is pointing towards him being an extremely obvious narcissist without any facade whatsoever, because he doesn't realise or just doesn't care how bad this sounds.
And that,
Can I ask you something?
of course,
Did you ever have anybody take care of you like that?
no.
That sounds really maternal. That sounds like, a mother-infant bond. Yes, we have our moments with lovers where that can happen, but I don't know. That's just what occurred to me when you were saying it.
That's a pretty profound thing to say.
Really? Not a fairly obvious, distracting, insignificant?
I'll go with profound.
What is profound about that? How is that profound? The drawing that parallel? Is it? I mean, that's like I'm sure if you open up one of these books, it's on the first fucking page.
Now, this may have been a bit of a mistake from Orna, the therapist. Most participants in couples therapy are very sensitive if they perceive that the therapist is taking a side. And Orna's use of the word profound to describe Annie's comment implies that she agrees with Annie. So it certainly wouldn't be surprising if there was some reaction from Mao to this, even if it was just a frustrated look. Having said that, even given this situation, his reaction is extremely vitriolic. He launches into an attack. Really? Not a fairly obvious, distracting, insignificant? He's dismissing and invalidating Annie's point, and essentially belittling her opinion. He gets even more worked up, questioning how it's profound, and then saying, "I'm sure if you open up one of these books, it's on the first fucking page." Again, it's belittling Annie's opinion, essentially saying it's basic and obvious because it would be on the first page of a psychology book. This use of an object to devalue someone is a common manipulation from narcissists known as triangulation. And it's also a bit of a swipe at Orna, showing contempt for her profession. Presumably Mao's referring to Freud's Oedipus complex, something very few modern-day psychologists would put any weight on. Mao's over-the-top response feels like it could be the hypersensitive response of a narcissist when their sense of control is threatened, and their fury ignites in order to reassert control. Finally, notice the slight smirk on Mao's face as Annie's speaking. This would imply contempt and haughtiness.
I'm just wondering if you're aware of how quickly you move to devaluation. Do you know that?
I think that I don't care how quickly I move to devaluation.
Whether you care.
Tackling Mao head-on like this is quite a bold move for a couples therapist. Mao's response saying that he doesn't care how quickly he moves to devaluation shows haughtiness, dismissiveness, a lack of accountability, and a lack of empathy.
Whether you care about it or not, I just want to
Am I aware
see
that
if
sometimes
you're aware
I
of
move
it.
quickly to devaluation? Yes.
But I'm also noticing how difficult it is to actually meet you. I notice even in the way I'm talking to you that it's very hard to get it right. Like when I try to say back to you what's going on, what I just heard, it's never right. And when you correct me, I can see why you're correcting me. I understand the nuance and where I missed the point.
That's very frustrating for me.
What
Yes,
I
I'm not-
want to hear is why is the moment where someone is not just right, why is that so devastating? That's
I don't know that it's
yours.
devastating. I think it's...
See, you did it just then.
Right.
Devastating
Right.
is not quite the right word, and you're going to correct
Right.
for devastating, and you can't
Right.
see that devastating
Right. That's okay.
might have like,
Well, it is simply not devastating. That is not a proper use of that word. In any of the word, I mean, unless you're being hyperbolic, and I don't know what the point of that would be. If the point was
I
clarity,
wasn't being hyperbolic. I'm actually assuming that in some way.
how about deeply inconvenient?
Again, Orna confronting Mao directly in this way is a bold strategy. Whether it's a good one, I don't know. Nevertheless, she's right. Mao does move quickly to devaluation. He's argumentative when Orna says something that isn't quite right, and he quickly proves her point by vehemently denying her suggestion that he's doing it because it feels devastating to him. It could be that Mao attacking the specific word Orna uses, devastating, is a way of deflecting from her accusation. The focus has shifted away from his devaluing behaviour onto Orna having to defend her choice of words. Could this be the instinctive manipulation of a narcissist to regain control of the situation? Now, it's probably the case that devastating isn't the correct word to use in this situation, And I think you could argue that Orna is being a bit too confrontational at this stage. But once again, it's the magnitude of Mal's response that is the red flag, saying, "It is simply not devastating. That is not a proper use of that word. I mean, unless you're being hyperbolic, and I don't know what the point of that would be." It comes across as haughty, perhaps even patronizing. It's exactly the prickly sort of response Orna was talking about in the first place, and it's often seen as a result of a narcissist's hypersensitivity to threats to control.
How about deeply inconvenient?
No, I don't think it's inconvenient. I think there's a much more emotional underlying structure to this.
I agree with Orna again here. There certainly seems to be a strong emotional reaction from Mal whenever anybody challenges him. This would be consistent with narcissism. But as with any red flag, it's far from determinative. Everybody feels defensive when they think they're under attack. And it's common for people during couples therapy to experience diffuse physiological arousal, often referred to as flooding. This is where their heart rate rockets to above 100 beats per minute and they're overrun by cortisol and adrenaline, essentially in a fight or flight response. They literally cannot think straight. Tunnel vision descends and they perceive everything as an attack on them. And this can result in vicious fighting back, or often actually shutting down. And it's often very difficult to detect flooding just by looking at somebody.
I think there's a much more emotional underlying structure to this.
Okay. But how can we quickly determine whether that's true or not?
As Orna is talking, Mal sighs loudly, and his haughty smirk has returned. He challenges her again.
Okay. But how can we quickly determine whether that's true or not?
You can ask yourself if you want to take something of what I'm saying to see if it's useful to you, or if you want to spar with me. If you don't want to spar with me, we don't have to discuss the accuracy. We just have to see if it's useful, what I'm saying, whether it's accurate or not.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know that I've ever been devastated in any prior event when that occurred, including my birthday. I didn't feel devastated.
So Orna seems to be suggesting that Mal focuses on the gist of what she's saying, rather than the accuracy of the specific words. But Mal essentially just ignores this and goes straight back to criticizing the use of the word devastated. Again, is this a deflection to allow him to go on the attack and assert control, rather than actually having to examine his own behavior? Is it a rejection of accountability?
I don't know how to do that. I don't know that I've ever been devastated in any prior event when that occurred, including my birthday. I didn't feel devastated.
You said disappointed.
I was disappointed.
Okay, so go with that.
There, a breakthrough.
There's some sarcasm and haughtiness from Mal when Annie suggests that he go with the word disappointed. There, a breakthrough. This is another piece of behaviour suggesting that he may be quite contemptuous towards the process of therapy. That's the end of the clip. On review, I would say that we've seen significant red flags from Mal. Straight out of the gate, the evidence is starting to point towards him being a very obvious narcissist without any facade. Can I say this for sure? No. We need to look at his behaviour over a period of time. We should never judge anybody on a snapshot of their behaviour. Everybody has bad days. Having said that, the thing that concerns me with Mal is the breadth of the red flags we've seen from him. He's hitting multiple categories. There's clear evidence of entitlement, wanting a mind reader as a partner, expecting them to provide very demanding sexual experiences for him and parties. There's grandiosity, for example referring to himself as Mr. Amazing and the easiest person to deal with, despite the evidence so far beginning to call these assertions into question. There's haughtiness, smirking, talking down to others and dismissing them. There's a potential lack of accountability, for example, refusing to examine his own behaviours and saying he doesn't care about moving quickly to devaluation. There's a lack of empathy, For example, cancelling the party Annie was organising for him at the last minute and flying to Italy alone. There's a strong suggestion of manipulative behaviour such as deflection, devaluation, triangulation, and invalidation. And he's showing signs of the narcissistic dynamic such as hypersexuality, spoiling occasions, and hypersensitivity to threats to control. So based on the sheer breadth of these red flags so far, I would have to say that it's highly likely Mao is a narcissist, although I absolutely cannot say that for sure yet, and I will continue to look at the evidence with an open mind. With Annie, I didn't see any significant red flags. She's obviously quite exasperated with Mao in some aspects, but that's to be expected in couples therapy. On the face of it, it seems as if she was showing empathy towards Mao in putting in a great deal of effort to planning his birthday. She also seems to be taking accountability for things she perceives as her errors in the problems they have. For example, in saying that she wasn't listening to him in the week leading up to his birthday. So if I were to put Annie and Mao on a scale, and I know these are the kind of breathtaking graphics you all watch this channel for, on the far left-hand red side would be someone I would bet my bottom dollar is a narcissist, and on the far right-hand green side is someone I'm convinced is not a narcissist. Annie would have moved a bit towards the green, and Mao would be making significant steps towards the red. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to like, comment and subscribe.